Hello Guyana and welcome to this week's edition of The Public Interest. Of course, I'm your host, Gomati Gangadan. Thank you for joining us. With us this week, as usual, is the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, His Excellency Brigadier David Granger. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Gomati.
We have joining us this week two journalists from the local media fraternity. They are to my extreme left, Tracey Khan-Drakes from Capital News and Mr. Tajeram Mohabir from the Guyana Chronicle. Welcome.
Thank you, Gomati.
This week we will be discussing local government elections, the first being held in Guyana in over 2 decades. Mr. President, today is local government elections in Guyana. You have struggled while in opposition, standing outside of this very building, calling for the holding of local government elections. As we see this reality here today, how are you feeling?
Well, first of all, I voted. I'm feeling very satisfied that the coalition, which I have the honor to lead, has struggled on the street and in the National Assembly to make this event possible. And we have delivered, empowered, we have ensured that the people of Guyana have the opportunity to participate in local government elections. And this is important for local democracy because, you know, there are 3 tiers of government, central, regional, and municipal or local. And this is an important day because although I've received reports that the turnout is not heavy, I am satisfied that we did everything we could on the part of the government to inform the population, to ensure that the legislation was in place, and to mobilize the people to support this important exercise in democracy. So I feel a deep sense of satisfaction today that we have come, in less than a year, the coalition has been able to make elections possible, and it's happening today, the 18th of March.
Thank you very much, sir. Journalists, you can now pose your questions on the topic.
All right, thank you, Gomati. Mr. President, it's a historic day, the first time we're having the local government elections in 22 years. Ideally, as a party in power, you'll be gunning for, or that's the ideal thing to do, gun for all the townships. It's a strategic thing. How do you fancy your chances at these elections?
Well, the important thing is that I'm not seeking what you may call a victory. I'm seeking an opportunity for the citizens of our towns and the residents of our neighborhoods to participate in this important democratic experiment. I call it an experiment because many young people growing up today never participated in the election before. But I'm confident, as you know, we've created 3 new towns at Mabromo, Bartica, and Lethem. There will be 71 elections taking place on the 18th of March. And I'm confident that even though there might be some apprehensions on the part of citizens about the efficacy of this form of democracy, I'm satisfied that there's a step forward. And you've already seen that we have encouraged a greater amount of discussion and debate among competing parties and partners. That I would say that even the general and regional election never encouraged this amount of participation among several other groups. People tended to stick to the main political parties, but this time there's been a proliferation of other groups. People are putting up their flags, independents are running. So I think that 18th of March will go down as an important opportunity for people of different political persuasion, different points of view, to express their views without fear. So everybody won't win, but everybody will be able to listen to what is being said and make a choice.
How do you fancy your chances at the elections?
Good. People know that the coalition government has brought back these democratic elections after not having voted since 1994. People know that the coalition government has created 3 new towns, and people know that we are committed to removing the scourge of IMCs and ensuring democracy thrives, and that we are committed to making Guyana a clean, green country. So people know all these things, and they know who to trust. And I believe they trust the coalition, and they will give the coalition its support. But as president, I'm prepared to work with whoever is elected to make sure that those three levels of government, central, regional, and municipal, combine their energies to give our people, the population as a whole, a good quality of life. So I would say the chances of the coalition are good.
Tracy?
Mr. President, there were some comments on social media about the use of state resources for campaign purposes, referencing several ministerial visits throughout the country. While in opposition, this is something that you were critical of. What is your response to these concerns?
Well, in my case, I admit that I've gone to various events in different parts of the country. I don't see how it is possible for me not to use state resources. I couldn't refuse to go with my security. I couldn't refuse to go with official transport. And very frequently, I have gone to, for example, Bartica to hand over a bus or bicycles. I've gone to Rose Hall to hand over a bus. I've gone to Sisters Village. So I've been moving about quite a lot because this is the program that was initiated last year and it's continuing. So I would not say that the coalition is being guilty of abuse. I know some ministers have gone out with their own resources to do campaigning. And these campaigns are being conducted in 71 areas. I've gone to a very limited number of townships. So I wouldn't believe that there is any ground for complaint and there's been any widespread abuse. It's not as though people took state funds. There is a difficulty in expecting the ministers to leave their security behind, leave their official vehicles behind, and just go walking about without protection. So I think the use of official, I would say, support has been minimal, and I have not seen any evidence of abuse of state resources.
I know that we haven't even gotten the results for today's elections, but in another 3 years, we're going to go back to the polls for local government elections. A year after, we're going to go for general elections. What legislative plans do you have in place to appropriately address the issue of campaign financing?
Well, there's nothing before the cabinet at present, but there have been recommendations previously, and I'm convinced that over the next 4 years we'll be able to pass something through the National Assembly. I have not seen it as yet. I have not seen any draft. There's no commitment to any timetable or deadline. But the important thing is to keep dirty money out of the elections, money which is gained from illegitimate sources, smuggling, contraband, and other sources, and of course to place a limit on the amount of contribution that could be accumulated by any single party or any individual participating in the elections. So I would say that over the next 4 years you're going to see this. Both APNU and AFC support campaign financing legislation, and I'm not sure it will be in time for the next local government election, but certainly for the next general and regional elections.
Mr. President, if I can bring you back to the topic of local government elections, sir. We haven't had local government elections for over 2 decades. How do you think Guyanese people are feeling? What is the mood like in the country?
I can't judge the entire country, but in those regions that I've been to, I've been to all regions except Region 8, there is a high degree of interest and enthusiasm. I can't say how widespread it is because the municipalities are only part of the region, and I have not gone into every single neighborhood. But I would say, regardless of the complaints about the low turnout, the fact is that on the 18th of March, we did not have a public holiday. Many people went to work, and maybe they'll start voting after lunch. But I would say that the enthusiasm is high, the interest is high, and some people perhaps wanted more explanation because it's a dual system with first past the post and proportional representation. But the use of photographs, the use of campaign symbols, I think made the voting a little easier. So I think those of us who have voted would realize it's quite a simple process, but people's confusion probably occurred in their mind because they never did it before and they didn't know what to expect. But I would say that the interest is very high, and I would expect that at the end of the day, the turnout will be well over 50%. That's my expectation.
Tajeram?
Thank you, Gumati. Mr. President, in another 3 years, we'll have local government elections again.
That's correct.
What are 5 things that you want to see and you'll work to see happen from now to then?
In local government, you mean?
Yeah.
First, I would like to see that the councils communicate effectively with their constituencies. I think once people remain in the positions too long, they tend to lose contact. I think the communication function is very important. Secondly, education. I would like to see the councils accept responsibility for ensuring that every single child in that municipality or that neighborhood gets into school, stays in school during his or her school days. I would like to see the council pay attention to the economy. Every one of the new townships, I believe, everyone has economic potential to open factories, to encourage investment, to provide employment to people in those communities. There's a huge dropout problem in Guyana. There's a huge unemployment problem in Guyana. And I would like the councils, both neighborhood and municipal, to pay attention to that. I would also like to see that there is more attention to greening Guyana, the environment. Last October, we introduced this practice of National Tree Day in October, and I'd like to see a greener Guyana in all of the municipalities. More trees, more fruit trees, more attention to the canals and to solid waste management. And finally, I'd like to see that the councils themselves become corporations, business enterprises, paying their own way, raising revenue in their communities, rather than depending on state subvention. These are the 5 things I'd like to see.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. One of the concerns or complaints that we've been getting, not under this administration, under the previous administration as well, is unemployment, high youth unemployment. What kind of support your administration intends to give to communities in addressing that problem? And do you see a need, a strong focus should be placed on agriculture in helping to alleviate this problem?
Yeah, well, you're answering the question. Thank you. I do see, and I've said this in public before, that there needs to be much more manufacturing. And in the first instance, that manufacturing should be based on agro-processing. That Guyana has a tremendous agricultural potential, which is, I think, underexploited. And most of our agricultural produce could be bottled or packaged or processed for use in other countries, and of course for use in households in the hinterland. For example, we have nearly 250,000 school children. Most of them would need breakfast. So I would see that we could go into agro-processing, and that is one area that municipalities could lead the way. And some of these commodities could be produced with very simple equipment. For example, we have a French company here which produces heart of palm. It's not terribly complicated, but most of the labor is done by Guyanese. And then we have traditional foods, pepper sauce, cassava bread, pineapple chunks, guava jam, guava cheese, guava jelly. All of these things could be produced on an industrial scale at the municipal level. And I think the municipalities should see themselves as corporations, encouraging business, rather than just being administrators and expecting subventions from the government. The municipalities and the neighborhood democratic council must consider ways and means of paying their way and earning a profit.
Thank you, Mr. President. Journalists, that has brought us to the end of questions on this topic. Mr. President, before I hand you over to Ms. Khan-Drakes, we've seen the Guyana Police Force putting out statistics over the past couple of days saying that they have recorded a 12% decrease in serious crimes. We know that that's thanks to the Operation Dragnet. Do you see us extending this operation beyond June as was previously stated?
Well, we planned the operation up to June because of the 50th anniversary celebration. But I expect that by that time we'll enter into a period of normal policing. As you know, when I addressed the annual Guyana Police Officers Conference, I emphasized the importance of community policing. We are now in negotiation with the British government, as you read in the newspaper, to reintroduce the Security Sector Reform Action Plan. So it is my expectation that by that time we wouldn't need to have special operations, that we will be able to rely on normal policing to restore a state of normalcy. For example, I was in quarantine last evening, and people can't remember the last event that there was a piracy attack. This is because we have been conducting aerial patrols along the coast. So, yes, I would agree with you that the results we see in the lower rates of serious crime have come about as a result of Operation Dragnet. But in the long term, we want a better trained police force, a better equipped police force, a better commanded police force, and a higher level of community policing. So that is what I will consider normal, and I want to keep on reducing the rate of serious crime in this country.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Khan-Drakes.
Thank you. Mr. President, recently self-confessed drug lord Barry Tajeram made some damning allegations against Kanu. Right after those allegations were made, you made a promise to set up a board of inquiry to investigate the allegations. Where are you with that? How soon will we see this board of inquiry set up, and have you identified the person or persons to lead the investigation?
Yes, I have identified the person, and he has agreed. The name of the person is Brigadier Bruce Lovell. It's a sole commissioner, and he will be conducting that investigation.
Can you say how soon?
I do know that the terms of reference have been approved, but I expect it's either going to be by the middle of, well, we passed the middle of March, at least by the 1st of April. But I know that he has agreed, and he's a sole commissioner.
Okay.
He's not investigating the whole of Kanu, he's investigating the allegations.
The allegations. Yes. Also, Mr. President, I'm sure you would have seen the report in the newspaper that a 10-year-old was locked up, allegedly locked up. There's been public outrage over this because there have been cases, proven cases, where minors were indeed locked up. What is your official position on this matter?
Well, my official position is that it's quite out of order for a minor to be locked up, as was reported. So I don't expect there'll be recurrence, and I'm quite confident that the Minister of Public Security is going to be investigating it and ensuring that it doesn't happen again.
Tajeram?
Yes, thank you, Gomati. Mr. President, the IMF in a recent report warned against the government offering big salary increases. Would this government be paying heed to that report from the IMF?
Well, the government started by recognizing that there needed to be some review of the salaries and conditions of services of the state sector, particularly public servants. And as you know, a commission was convened under Professor Harold Dutchman. We are awaiting the report of that commission. I don't have a date when that report will be presented. But once that report is presented, we will be informed, and we will then enter into negotiations with the unions connected with the Guyana Public Service. So that is where we stand. We will wait the report and then begin negotiations. But two things should be borne in mind. One is that we recognize the importance of bargaining with the union, and second, we recognize the importance of investigating the conditions, so that we can be better, the government can be better informed, and that the outcome will be the result of a process. It will be unilateral, as happened in the past.
Okay, so that election's promise of a significant increase for public servants is not ruled out.
No, but let's see what the report says. Let's see what the report says. We haven't ruled out, we know that there's going to be an increase, but we cannot state the quantum at this point in time.
Tracey, you can go ahead.
Mr. President, while on the campaign trail, the coalition made a number of promises. One included the hosting of local government elections. That has been done. The government must be commended for doing that. Another promise was inclusive governance and unity talks with the opposition. Where are you with that, sir?
Well, as you know, I did meet Mr. Jagdeo, and we have agreed more or less to keep pace with him, to work at his tempo, whatever that is. But I am open to talk to Mr. Jagdeo, and when he's ready, we will proceed. So far, we've exchanged lists of responsibilities. He has a list of the ministers in our cabinet, and I have a list of his nominees who are their counterparts. For example, I could tell you for Foreign Affairs, Ms. Gail Teixeira is responsible, and she has attended meetings with Mr. Carl Greenwich at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So we've started to work. I wouldn't call it unity talks, but there's a high level of collaboration, and we will continue that collaboration.
Also, sir, there continues to be much talk, and I know you mentioned that you're working with the British government on the prison reform system. But can we talk about now, what is your government going to do to deal with the issue of prison reform? Because this is an old issue. What are some of the things that you'd like to do?
There are various levels. As you know, I've been to Mazruni prison myself as a visitor. First of all, we have to deal with the overcrowding. There are 3 main prisons. All of them were constructed in the 19th century. And the physical infrastructure is quite poor. But the most important element in resolving the problems in the prison service is to deal with overcrowding. This could be dealt with 2 ways. One is that there could be more equitable distribution of prisoners among the 3 prisons. And secondly, as you know, the government or the executive branch has engaged the judicial branch to see whether persons who are committed to prison on remand or are awaiting sentences or they're in the prison system for any other reason could be given maybe different types of sentences, or whether measures could be taken to ensure that the build-up doesn't reach the proportions that it reached on the 3rd of March. So the judicial system has to play a role. It is not purely government, executive, and we hope that fewer people would be sentenced for petty offenses, or fewer people will be put on bail, large amounts of bail for small offenses, and when in fact they are not a risk. They could be given smaller amounts of bail and stay at home with their families. So these are some of the measures we're taking. In addition to that, we have to fix the prisons. We have to provide more accommodation at Mazruni. We have to provide better rehabilitation services so that we reduce the rate of recidivism. So when people go in, you know, they leave with a skill. I mean, the prison service will become something of a training school for minor and first offenders. You know, there are some hardcore prisoners who are likely to be confined there for long periods, but for first-time first-time offenders and minor offenders, we hope to make the prison system into something of a training school that will rehabilitate them rather than, you know, perpetuate their incarceration. So these are some of the measures: the physical infrastructure, the reduction of the congestion, and rehabilitation. Most more important too is the quality of staffing. The prison system or the prison service is badly understaffed, and one of the reasons why some of the facilities at Mazruni were not fully occupied because there were not sufficient prison officers there. And we have had to embark on a flexible measure of recruitment to ensure that they're properly trained prison officers. I don't want to go into all the details. They must be properly trained, and perhaps they can be given more flexible service. Some of them might have been implicated. As you know, commission of inquiry is taking place right now. We want a higher quality of prison officer. But right now, we're looking at the number of prison officers as well as the quality. So those are 4 of the measures that I would like to announce at the present time. But A, the inquiry is still going on, and B, the changes are taking place.
Tajeram?
Thank you, Gomati. Mr. President, let us go back to the IMF report. That report raised a red flag on non-performing loans. Those loans have a negative impact on the economy. How your administration intends to address that problem?
Well, by ensuring there's greater compliance and by ensuring that there is greater enforcement on the part of the executive branch. Yes, you can blame the executive, and we need to look to see what happened in the past. Of course, the IMS is not reporting on 9 months, it's reporting on a longer period of time. So we need, as a government, to ensure there's greater compliance and enforcement. That's all I can say at this point in time, because we are now discovering some of the problems which were bequeathed to us by the previous administration. For example, the courts made rulings against the government, and the amounts that were granted in those rulings against the government were never paid. So we have accumulated, a large amount of debts which ought to have been paid as a result of court rulings. So we are now discovering these issues. So some inquiries have been conducted, and some of these facts have been brought to light. But I'm confident that under the present Minister of Finance, we'll be able to ensure greater compliance and greater enforcement.
From the information that you have at hand, could you give a value to those loans?
No, I wouldn't be able to say. I wouldn't be able to say.
Is there anything specific you have in mind to address that situation?
Well, at present, no. There is a raft of measures we have been contemplating to improve compliance and enforcement in all of the areas. For example, in mining, as you know, we had another fatality. And this might have come about because of the lack of enforcement on the part of the state. There's now an inquiry going on in forestry, in NIS. I think in almost every single area of government operation and administration, there has been a lack of enforcement and compliance. So, quite frankly, I must admit, we have considered this. It's creating, again, without wanting to increase the number of public servants, we have to strengthen the enforcement agencies available to the government. You have to have inspectors going into the mines so that proper workplace safety workplace safety regulations could be enforced. We have to have people going into the forest to make sure that forestry regulations are not abused. We have to have officers enforcing NIS. We have to have officers enforcing customs and other regulations to cut out contraband and backtracking. So there are measures that we are contemplating, and we are trying to do this within the framework of a limited budget. We don't want to create a huge bureaucracy of enforcers, but at the same time, we want to make sure that there's a high level of compliance. So yes, there are measures, and those measures will largely be on the enforcement side and the compliance side.
Thank you, Mr. President. The last question goes to you, Tracey.
Mr. President, we know that the Commission of Inquiry is ongoing into the prison unrest. Now, you said that government will, government is looking to compensate the family.
No, I didn't say that.
Possibly.
I said, my words were provide relief too.
So
I never use the word compensate.
Well, that word has been flying somewhat, and my apologies. So the relief is the $100,000, or are we going to have to wait to see what comes out of the commission that's going to
I
determine.
think that is the relief announced by the Minister of Public Safety, and that's it.
Public security.
That is it.
That's it. We haven't contemplated compensation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, journalists. That has brought us to the end of this week's edition of The Public Interest. Do remember to join us next time. Have a good day, Guyana.